You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
A drink. I'm wanting you in the hole, get your sleep. So be yourself. And try to have a good time. Be yourself. And try to have a good time. Be yourself. Maybe a rambling man, but I can't be a one if you allow it. You're a mystery so deep, I can meet his wouldn't think to try and figure out it. I'm eating you like bacon needs eggs. I'm eating you and there's nothing more to say. So be yourself. And try to have a good time. Be yourself. Try to have a good time. Be yourself. And try to have a
Nintendo Switch.
Morning, everybody. Hi, this is Mike Balzer, All Things 3D, 3D in Review for Friday, the 21st of October. And what you just saw was the, about 3 minutes and 30 seconds worth of great Nintendo stuff. So what does that have to do with 3D? Well, actually, the whole point behind the Switch is that I guess at one time it was considered the Nintendo NX, and the Nintendo NX was a device that had been rumored to use the NVIDIA chip. Now, behind me is the GameSpot, and obviously all the blogs are identifying stuff that's going to be available with this new Switch unit. But I thought I'd run through it, and one of the reasons I selected the GameSpots is that I think it had probably the best article, and more importantly, they seem to have a better understanding of what's inside of it. And maybe I didn't get the right one, but GameSpot actually identified what I had pretty much assumed would be in there because of my own development with the NVIDIA Shield TV, and that is some form of Tegra chip. And in fact, I'm very strongly, and in fact, they even made a mention here I'm strongly convinced it is the TX2. And to kind of confirm that NVIDIA is actually involved in this, is that if you go out to NVIDIA's site themselves, as you can see behind me here, you can see that the NVIDIA actually in their blog has written about how they're using some form of Tegra chip. Again, I think it's the TX2, and I'll explain a little bit what the TX2 is and why that's extremely important. But also the fact is that they have a series of development tools. Now, I don't know if they created custom tools, but I do know that they have a ton. If you look at the upper bar here, they have a ton of tools already that support gaming as well as virtual reality. They may have some new custom tools, but they've already made some tools that are what do you want to call it, designed specifically for their chipsets, their GPUs. Something else that should be noted is the TX2, the GPU in the TX2 will have a Pascal GPU in it, or at least a large subset of it. In fact, if I remember correctly, it has basically an entire Pascal chips in it. And if that's the case, what that means is that not only do you have the performance of the TX2, which is supposedly about twice the performance of the TX1, but it's also supposedly can be throttled down to be more, what do you want to call it, tablet friendly. And if you remember, or if you've been following like me, I actually have the NVIDIA Shield tablet itself. It's one of the better Android type tablets, and there was rumors last year as well as earlier this year that they were going to come out with a refresh version including a Tegra chip in it, and everybody was excited about it. And then last minute they canceled that and saying for business reasons. Well, in my opinion, this is the business reason. This is the Nintendo Switch. It will probably use, and I'm pretty confident, the TX2 chip, which will perform about, in my opinion, about 4 times that of a Snapdragon 820. In my development with the Shield TV, which includes the TX1, and also, I don't know if you're aware of it, but this little tablet here by Google called the Pixel C also contains a TX1, and obviously the Switch will have a smaller screen. But the point is, some people are complaining, well, it won't have the battery life. Well, I get about 8 hours on my Pixel C. So I do know that it's quite possible that it would be able to get that kind of battery, at least 8 hours, so which I think would work pretty well. I also feel that the little console there, the docking station, either will have its own cooling system. That might be a fan behind there that you see there. So what that could do is they could actually clock this higher, maybe a performance mode. So when you hook it up to your actual TV, you have a better performing device than you would when you put it in tablet mode. Now, again, that's just an assumption on my part, but there's no reason for that. In fact, when I had talked to NVIDIA about my own developments, they strongly suggested just clock down the chip if you want better battery performance. But again, in my own development, I have found, at least with the TX1, and again, the TX2 should be twice the performance, I'm able to get twice that of a Snapdragon 820. And if you go out and look at the Shield TV, which includes the TX1, a lot of the content that you can now get on it are like AAA games, maybe last year before. For instance, you can get Valve Half-Life. What else is out there? Skyrim is now available for it. So many of these games, and again, it's probably not working in the best graphics mode that you would have on a PC, but they still look pretty good. And as you saw in the video there, they were pretty good, in my opinion. Now, the other rumor is Nintendo is not pushing this as a VR device. However, if it actually has a port, let's say a custom port, there's no reason that you could make a docking station to maybe put it on like a fanny pack. Oh, I know that sounds scary, but let's just say something like that. So you'd have a completely mobile system here, and then if you had a headset that connected to it, you would have a fully self-contained system using the most powerful portable mobile chip in the world. Now, again, it's not available yet, but the fact is that this will be available in March. Tells me that they probably got an inside track to it. In my own experience with Nintendo, they were very hesitant to really say anything, who they were working with, what you could get, which I think, frankly, is politics. I think that, obviously they must have made some type of deal with Nintendo. But anybody else who has been wanting to move forward with the TX2, even though it was just identified, they have been very slow forthcoming in it. And again, it might be because of this. So it's a very exciting device. I think there's a lot of possibilities. Some people aren't really fans of the Nintendo, but I think even, let's see if I can go back to, I think GameSpot actually had one of their more recent article that there have been more hits to this particular video than anything else in that matter of time. So obviously it's a very, very popular device that'll be coming out. So we'll see. I think it actually is really, really cool. And I'm really excited about it. I think that there's a lot of possibilities, and we'll see if they'll actually move in that direction with it. So again, we'll see. Okay, so let's move on to our next item. And I want to kind of talk about this a little bit. And I think I actually have a video. And let's see, what time is it? In about 10 minutes, we're actually going to have the vice president of Ultimaker North America join us to kind of talk about these upcoming products, talk about Ultimaker's role in the United States. If you're aware of it, first of all, if you're not, the Ultimaker is a 3D printer. It was made in the Netherlands. It is one of the better printers. It's won a lot of awards. It has a great design. I've actually owned 2 of them. I've had some reservations, but I was one of the first with the Ultimaker 2. So they have made a lot of improvements with it. There have been concerns about the Bowden type extruder. I think that they have put a lot of effort ensuring the reliability in that. And then obviously, I don't know if Chris will be joining us, but we'll talk about it here in a moment. The Ultimaker 3, as we garnered from the previous video last week, is a dual extruding type printer. It also has an auto leveler. So let's go ahead and watch the video real quick.
This is the Ultimaker 3, a professional yet accessible 3D printer with reliable dual extrusion.
So again, the form factor is very similar to the previous version, which is the Ultimaker 2, and there will also be an Ultimaker 2 Extended, which is a higher, which is I think this one here. So it actually extends higher, so you can get a larger volume size, or at least taller volume size. So here they're describing the dual heat nozzle systems.
Its print core PCB ensures a more accurate temperature reading.
Now, keep in mind that Ultimaker, one of the things and one of the reasons why they're so prominent and popular, like the Lozbot, is very open as far as the designs. And in fact, there have been a number of clones based upon the Ultimaker. But the fact is, as you're watching here, their nozzles obviously have some electronics, can be snapped in and immediately changed out for different sizes depending on material, which I think is super cool.
Leveling the build plate is effortless. When you use it for the first time, simply set the right height by turning a knob while using the Ultimaker calibration card. After that, the Ultimaker 3's active leveling does it automatically. The capacitive sensor in the print head measures the distance between the build plate and the nozzle. When starting a print, the offset is compensated by adjusting the Z height in the first layers. This results in more accurate leveling, improved build plate adhesion, and optimized print quality. Pre-configured Cura profiles provide you with optimal print settings per material and intuitively recognize which print core and material you're using. Ultimaker's range of materials are formulated to achieve superior print results, and the open filament system lets you experiment with all kinds of additional materials. To bring your 3D model to life, you'll need to prepare it for print using Cura, our free slicer software. You can either stick with the preset or tinker with the advanced settings. Through standalone printing, you can print directly from your PC or laptop via Wi-Fi or LAN connection. Alternatively, you can load the G-code files on a USB drive that slots into the Ultimaker 3. The control panel lets you make any adjustments during the
Obviously, these are some unique changes. The fact is that you can work with USB, which you could in the past. I don't know if they had an SD card slot on this, but notice right next to it, it had Wi-Fi capability. Now, this is not something new. We've talked about it. There's a lot of associated units that you can work alongside your 3D printer, and we've covered several of them. But the fact is that it's built in, I think, is another cool factor.
Ultimaker 3's unique nozzle lifting system ensures that there's no nozzle collision while printing and no problematic oozing.
Now, what's funny is the original Ultimaker, the Ultimaker 2, had always had, if you notice on the right-hand side there, holes to put in another extruder. And I asked him about that. When are we going to have this available? Could I be part of the beta testing? And they were slow to respond to that. So obviously they've now taken advantage of it. And as you can see there, this was something that they have been designed for some time. But I do want to make the point that they did say that they weren't going to release this until they pretty much made it foolproof. And from what I can tell, not only does it look clean, I always think of the Ultimaker as something out of, do you remember the White Room scene in, what was it, the second, so we actually have John. John, I don't know if you can see the video behind me, but we're showing the Ultimaker video, and I'm kind of talking over it. I've owned the Ultimaker 2 as well as the Ultimaker to go. I've had Eric on several times, but you know what's important for those of us in North America is that Ultimaker really hasn't had a strong presence, and the fact is that you're on the show indicates that that's changing or has changed, and I just haven't kept up with it. So let me go ahead and introduce you. Actually, I didn't have your last name. John, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are?
Yes, good to be here this morning. So my name is John Kawola, and I'm the president of Ultimaker.
That's ideal for exceptionally strong functional prototypes.
Okay, John just broke up on me.
What we've been doing, as you know, Ultimaker's been around for about 5 years now, but
the Ultimaker 3 comes with free lifetime technical support.
John, you're cutting in and you're cutting in and out.
Okay.
And, so what you might want to do, if you go up to the top of the Google On Air bar, there's it looks like a signal strength. If you adjust that down, that will limit the amount of bandwidth that you're using.
Okay, let me try that again.
So also while you're getting set up, John, All 3DP, I guess, has done a review on the Ultimaker 3 already, or at least identified some facts. Maybe they just extracted it, but they talk about some of the features and pricing and so forth. And I guess having you available, even though I was told you really can't talk about the Ultimaker 3, is that still the case?
Well, no, the Ultimaker 3 we formally launched on Tuesday. So on October 18th. So it's it's public information. It's available to purchase now, so I can freely talk about it.
Great, excellent. So let's kind of run through. I mean, we just went through the video on it.
Yeah.
You know, other than it shares, and you can probably see the screen behind me. It shares a lot of the looks, which I think are great looks of the Ultimaker 2, but there are some unique features that make this different. One of them is it now contains dual extruders. And, you know, I was making a point when I was watching the video and having an Ultimaker 2, there were always holes cut out in the back of the Ultimaker 2. And I had talked to Eric and I said, Eric, what does it take to get the extra or the second extruder? And he told me, well, we'll put you on the experimental, the beta version, but we're really not going to push this until we get it right. So obviously I think they've gotten it right, but maybe you can fill us in a little bit more. So as I scroll down here, obviously one of the things that was mentioned in the video is that like some other 3D printers, and we won't mention any names, make or buy, they have removable, what do you want to call it, extruders themselves, or not the extruders, but the hot ends. But there was a whole assembly. And as you remember, they kind of quickly went to the market with it. They had a lot of problems with it. However, you've used an interesting design that looks very much like an inkjet printer, where you actually just have the nozzle. There seems to be some control circuitry built into it. And I'm assuming this is so that you can push this in. The processor can identify what your nozzle size is and be able to switch to a different material, or a different, obviously, extrusion thickness. So, I mean, we can go back to that a little bit.
Yep.
Some other things, you know, you've already changed out with the newer Ultimaker 2, the extruder. Now, I have to tell you, I had one of the first Ultimaker 2s, and it was like a love-hate relationship. I've not been a big fan of Bowden's. I was not a big fan of the original extruder, but I do know that they've made some changes to it, and it is more reliable. And nothing worse than having a print die on you about 8 hours into it. So I'm glad to see that. Looks like you have a built-in camera now. Some other people have done this as well to keep an eye on it. I love that feature. I actually had one set up myself with a little, what do you want to call it, nook and a webcam in order to provide that kind of functionality. And then you have some new connectivity. Now, one thing I noticed is, does this have a SD card slot anymore, or have you removed that?
So it no longer has SD. So it has a LAN connection in the back, has Wi-Fi capability, but then also USB. So I think with between those choices, that will give users a range of different ways to connect.
No, and that's excellent. As I was mentioning earlier, there are some other products out there using the Raspberry Pi that allow you to do something similar to that, but to actually have that built in now, I think is a great feature. And then you have auto leveling, and auto leveling, at least in other printers, has been a plus or minus. So maybe we can talk a little bit about why you feel the audio lever on this, as identified there, is fiddle-free, and how that is, because some of the others just don't seem to live up to their name. And then finally, the pricing. Ultimaker has always had a higher price than some of the others, but I think it's because you're getting a nice finished product. But keep in mind, it seems to be comparative to the Ultimakers in that series, so it's not necessarily that much higher. But maybe you can explain what you're getting for this extra money. Okay, so I'll just jump back to the top of this website. Now, when I went out to the actual Ultimaker, there wasn't, actually there is. Let me jump to that right now. You have this nice little thing over on the side here. So let's go ahead and just talk about the main feature, the dual extruder. Why now?
Well, I think you know, as the market has certainly, one, we feel there's market demand for it. So in terms of being able to print multiple materials or two colors at once, and then probably most importantly, the idea of printing build material and support material, clearly we see there's a market demand for it. And especially as we move from our business being, you know, primarily makers and fab labs and users like that when the company first started, and really as the desktop category first started, going back five or more years. But as the market has evolved, and as technologies have evolved, Ultimaker, but also a number of our competitors in the market, the technologies are all getting better in terms of capability, reliability, and so more and more schools, more and more design organizations, big and small, are starting to really adopt desktop 3D printers, where that wasn't quite the case a few years ago. And so dual extrusion, you know, why now? Well, we needed something. We felt for the customer, and for, I think, even for our success, to be able to deliver something that was reliable, could give prints that are comparable, you know, to some of the higher range, more professional 3D printers that are on the market. So we took our time, I think, in a lot of ways, and tried to build in features that could bring a range of materials. You may have noticed in some of the videos, the dual extrusion also has the feature where the tips are moving up and away from each other to prevent collision and prevent scratching in the prints. And then tied to, tied to the dual extrusion is this concept of the print cores that you pointed out. And one, we like the idea of print cores for users to be able to very quickly snap in and snap out different cores with different tips, or different, what you actually do have, you can't see it from the outside, but you have different nozzle configurations on the inside. So for example, build material, in our first iteration, build material and support material has a different geometry on the inside, because you care about different things with build material versus support material. And so that's really the reason why we have the print cores and the dual extrusion together. When we thought about the solution as well, I'm starting to tick down some of the big features here, but then you also have the whole idea of connectivity with a network. You have the NFC chip communication on the back of the machine that communicates with the spools. So the spools communicate with the machine, communicate with the print cores. There's certainly a population of our customers who like to tinker under the hood and make adjustments. But more and more, as we move into education environments and professional environments, I think users want to press the button and get a part that comes out at the end. So almost everything you've seen in here, from dual extrusion to print cores to some of the automation features to the bed leveling, to all these things, are really with the more professional user in mind, who wants to press the button and come back in 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, depending on how long it takes to print the part, and just get the part. And so that was really our whole focus here with this product.
So let me stop you there for a moment. You identified that there is an NFC chip on the spools of filament itself. Now, is this something that's going to be closed within Ultimaker, or is this something you're sharing with other filament makers, and they can attach this NFC, because they're fairly inexpensive, to put a signature on their products to immediately work with this? I'm assuming that's the direction you're going?
Yeah, well, at present, for the first iterations as we launch, the NFC chip is really only available in Ultimaker branded spools. And we, starting in late spring this year, for the first time, we really were offering products, filaments branded by Ultimaker, tested, certified. We started with a basic set of PLA and ABS and CPE, and then we expanded on that over the summer with some additional materials, nylon and polycarbonate and a few others. So with the first iteration here, that chip will just be Ultimaker spools. It doesn't mean users can't use other materials. So certainly other branded materials could be used on the machine. It just means that the user would have to do more manual setting in Cura to get set up.
Okay. But yeah, as you mentioned, well, one of the big pluses was identified when the video was playing is that Ultimaker has done a great job of making their stuff open source. In fact, if I remember, the Ultimaker 2 eventually became open source as far as all the information on how to create that. If you wanted to do so, it'd probably be twice as expensive, but it all became available. Is that going to be the same case with the Ultimaker 3?
Yeah, so we continue to stick to the open source approach. I mean, when we look back over 5 years and we look at the benefit to the community, the benefit to the customers, and three, the benefit to Ultimaker. I think we view ourselves as also being net winners here in being able to make this open source. We've gotten a lot of features and things about the machines and Cura that have helped us do that. So we plan to continue to do that.
Well, one of the things that my host and I, our co-host, who for whatever reason is not here today, I was hoping to join us. He was pretty excited about this as well. Both of us have kind of migrated to Simplify 3D, and the main reason for using Simplify 3D over Cura is the more control over support structures. Now that you have the ability to actually create supports as a dissolvable material, is there going to be more control in that feature in Cura?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see that more functionality in Cura, whether it's for example more control over supports, is important, and we continue to see that Cura needs to evolve, every quarter to meet the demands of the customers and everybody out there. we still see the Ultimaker 2 Plus and the Ultimaker 2 Plus line. And for the people who may want to use the Ultimaker 3 without dissolvable support, maybe they want to use that with other support materials, are going to need to be able to optimize supports in the future. So, we see Simplify 3 as a very strong product. And we, in a lot of ways, aspire to have some of the features that they have now in Cura in the future.
So obviously, what's the term for elephant in a room here is that Simplify 3D does a good job of supporting other printers. I'm assuming that they'll also support the Ultimaker 3, especially for somebody who's already purchased a license for it, like myself. So you could have the best of both worlds. But please, in no way am I saying the Cura product is weak. It has a lot of strengths, and the other thing is that it is free, unlike Simplify 3D. Not saying I think it's $130 for Simplify 3D, but it's included. Plus, you can use Cura with other products as well. So if you needed a consistent line there. So let's see. One of the things that has always struck me is the way it looks. I mean, this is something that I wouldn't mind putting in my living room. Well, maybe not that far, but it is elegantly made. I mean, I like the white finish of it. In fact, I always made sure that I wiped mine down because I didn't want to have fingerprints on it. Now, I don't know if I got that critical after a while, but I always liked the way I was proud the way it looked like. And when they put out the Ultimaker to go, and the fact is that they thought of, well, what could you do in order to carry this? Now, I don't know if you know my backstory, but the reason I had an Ultimaker to go is that Eric sent me one when I was giving a TEDx talk in Madrid, Spain, and I actually had it on stage with me, the little thing. Actually used the box as a stand. So I was pretty excited about having that flexibility, and we actually did a little bit of review. I didn't have a lot of time to work with it, and now it sits at Stanford in the kind of like their STEM program up there. And so it, as you mentioned, it looks good. There's in my opinion, a great reliability factor. And the other thing is that even in the Netherlands, they were always there to support you. And I always felt I always got immediate feedback. And even though, like I said, I had one of the first Ultimaker 2s, and I had maybe a few grievances in the beginning, they were always there to send me parts, get the thing working, and that always stood out to me. And the fact is that Eric would come on my show. I can't remember the other gentleman's name, but I've had another guy. I saw him at CES. So you've always been on the show, and I may not have the largest audience, but I have some dedicated people, and I really appreciate you coming on my discussions and so forth. So again, on short notice, I just sent out yesterday. You're here.
No, it's certainly our pleasure. I mean, and part of our push in the last 6 months is to become more of a global company. I think when we first started, we had a lot of loyal users who signed up and got first machines, and we recognized it wasn't easy to pay in euros or to get it from across the ocean. And so it's been part of our strategy over time that to be much more of a global company. One of the reasons why we've set up more of a structure here in the United States here this year, and we expect to continue to do that. We like to very much stick to our Dutch heritage, but at the same time, we want to make it feel that a customer here in the U.S. or in Canada or in other parts of North America feel that there's no penalty or no inconvenience in buying a product that's initiated from a company in Europe.
Okay, well, let's finish up with the Ultimaker 3, and then we'll talk about the obviously the North America version of Ultimaker. Gosh, was it 2015? I can't even remember. Actually, maybe it have been 2013, 2014. As you indicated, it was all based in Netherlands. Getting something here took weeks. And then obviously I had to send one back, and there was the tariffs from sending something back, the duty charges. And so all of it, obviously all of that's going to be avoided now. Right. But, as I mentioned earlier, the Ultimakers seem to have a premium price. Is that fair to say? I think so, and I think you're getting a premium product, and it seems to extend it over into the Ultimaker 3, $34.95. Now, I don't have the Ultimaker 2 Plus information in front of me. How much more is this over the Ultimaker?
It's $1,000. So the Ultimaker 2 Plus is $24.99 presently, and we'll continue to keep that product available at that price. Now that the 3 is available.
Okay, so essentially for $1,000, you're getting, I'm assuming, a new CPU, the ability to do Wi-Fi, the dual extruders, the interchangeable nozzles, the smart nozzles, I'll call them. You had a term for it, but
So we call them print cores.
Okay, so you have print cores now. What other features are you getting for that $1,000?
Well, again, it's you listed some of them there, but again, dual extrusion, print cores, the networking capability with Wi-Fi. You've got the NFC communication now with the reel holder. So the NFC reader is actually in the reel holder in the back, and then that's plugged into the machine so that it's all synced together. Those are the main differences. There's a couple other differences. There's we made some structural changes to the bed itself. It's stiffer. There's now the active bed leveling approach that we're using as an added feature for quality. So those are the main things that are adding up for that represent the price difference.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the Ultimaker 3, and let's see. It tells me where I can the resellers where to buy in the United States. You have 3 of them. Dynamism.
Well, there's actually more. So if you click below, you can see there's more. But
okay,
feature different ones at different times.
Okay, so and I'm assuming all of these will probably be supporting it at the same price. And yes, you do have a series of them.
Yep.
All right, so let's say something goes wrong. In the past, as I mentioned, when something went wrong with mine, they sent me out parts, or in one case, I had to get a full exchange because they sent me the wrong unit, which took weeks. Now, obviously, now having a North American office, that's not going to be the case. If I have something that goes wrong with it, where do I send it in the United States?
Yeah, so we have, maybe I'll describe briefly our service infrastructure. So
okay.
Each of our resellers are trained to be able to answer questions over the phone, help our customers do training. If it's local, they could stop by and help. So we'll call that the first tier of support. The second tier of support is we work closely with a company here in the United States called Fabricate. And Fabricate is also the place where we assemble and manufacture systems for the North American market. So if you are a customer who's in California or Florida or Michigan or New York, you're not getting it from the Netherlands. So you're getting it from our facility at Fabricate, which is actually based in Memphis. And so we started that a little while ago. So Fabricate is our assembly facility, but it's also our customer tech support facility. So if the reseller can't help or needs assistance in guidance, you can go directly to Fabricate and they can help answer your questions. Or if it gets to that point, and we generally don't have too many of those, but it does happen, where a unit needs to be repaired or fixed or changed out or something, it would get shipped back to Fabricate in Memphis, and then either the unit would be fixed or refurbed, or a new unit would be sent out.
Now, when you say Fabricate, is that actually FBRC8?
Yep, that's it right there. Yep.
Yeah, and I actually tried to go out them. I don't know why their website's not coming up for me, but yeah, I get this. So so it's probably the fact is I'm pushing my connection here. Okay. So if more people want to know about them, I'll put that in the show notes. Or actually just go out to Ultimaker and it has the full listing of them. Right. Okay, so as mentioned, if you're interested in an Ultimaker 3, there are plenty of places. You're still carrying the previous version as well, which is the Ultimaker 2 Plus now. You no longer carry the Ultimaker 2, correct? No. I mean, I think there are some available, limited stock available if you go to a few resellers around the country, but it's now just the
the line, the product line. We still sell the Ultimaker Original Plus. So if people are interested in the kit to be able to put something together, we still offer the Ultimaker to go. And then we have the 2 Plus and the 2 Plus Extended, and now we have the 3 and the 3 Extended as our full product line.
Okay. So the other question is, you're still supporting the to-go, and
Yeah.
So 3 printers, both the 2s and the 3s, and again the 3s have a lot of new features, and pretty excited about it. We'll have to see. I probably won't be getting one, but Chris is looking at getting another 3D printer. He's I'm assuming, making money at actually printing. He's been a low spot, but he's always had his eye on Ultimakers, and this might be the one that turns him around. He's also got the big boy. He's got a Stratasys Fortis 250, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So he's surrounded by 3D printers. It's sad that he wasn't here. He'd probably have his own questions for you. Well, again, John, I appreciate your time, and we're just going to move on with our show, and thank you.
That was my pleasure. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye. So that was John from North America Ultimaker, and pretty cool. I do, as mentioned, it can be a struggle if you're a company outside the United States. There's a lot of things that has to come into mind. If you ever shopped on eBay, one thing that's glaringly obvious is the delay in when you'll receive it. So obviously having a place that you can have inventory, or in this case, multiple resellers, getting one is easier, and working with somebody, if I noticed, Matter Hackers, Adafruit, or Adafruit, these are all, well-known locations for this type of stuff. So hats off to Ultimaker. I think it's going to be pretty cool. I look forward to some other reviews. We'll see if Chris is actually going to buy one. All right, let's move on to our next series of news. And again, I don't know what happened to Chris. He was supposed to be here, actually was filling out his notes. So sadly, it's just going to be me, but that may also make us get through the show a lot quicker as well. So let me see where we're at. I think I'm going to mention what Chris brought in. Last week we had Vuze on, and if you remember, this is a 8-camera spherical 360, but also has a unique feature of doing stereo. And the stereo, I think, is an important feature. And what that allows you to do is have depth information. And we showed some examples. Now, Chris said he actually downloaded some of the footage and brought it into his Oculus, but felt that the quality was not quite there. Now, keep in mind, they did say it was 2K or actually a 4K spherical. And I have found personally, to get sharp quality, you'd have to push it to 8K. So I don't know if that was just an example footage. Because each of the elements are 2K, they could probably push it to an 8K spherical. Now, keep in mind, an 8K spherical is not the same as a 4K plane projection. It's 8K that is wrapped around an entire sphere, which gives you about 4K, actually about 3K. In quality. But it's obvious. I've got a few examples up on my YouTube channel, All Things 3D, if you want to go out there and see what the difference is. But in his mind, he feels the 4K cameras from Gopro, but he didn't really identify what that means. The 4K Gopro footage from a standard camera, again, as mentioned, 4K for a spherical versus 4K for a single plane projection is not the same. And yes, you would be able to get better quality from that. Other than that, I don't, you're looking at almost, for the newer 4K, about what, $400, so half the price of the Vuze. And I never expected the Vuze to be of extremely high quality, because there are other cameras out there in the $15,000 to $25,000 range that do the same thing for that price range. So, not saying you get what you pay for, but I think for the quality that I saw, the fact is that you can actually have true depth information would be very important. And again, I think lighting is another consideration. So I may want to download some video, and maybe we can talk about it when he comes on. All right, so we went over the Ultimaker already. Let's look at another product that, and I've got another video here to show. This is Doodle 3D. And what I thought was very cool about this was essentially, as they're showing behind me here, having kids get involved with it. Now, it appears that it's some form of tablet, but because they work off of the extrusion process, literally you can draw 2D and then extrude it, as we're showing there. And then each component can be extruded and created as a separate entity. And then you can 3D print them. And this is where their strength is. Once you create this, not only can you 3D print it to a printer of your own choice, but it also has other locations, as we're seeing here, shapeways. You could put it out to Sketchfab for others to see. But it's very cool. Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump to it now. The Kickstarter, which just finished yesterday, I was hoping to have them on. Maybe we'll have them next week. Let's jump out to it. Finished up, and they have received 68,772 euros. And so they have completed it. I actually got in the window yesterday and put in 20 euros in order to have my own copy and also to support them. I think it's a cool application. It looks user-friendly, kid-friendly, and basically provides just enough tools to create some rudimentary 3D objects, but with the right hands, creative hands, you could probably do a lot more with it. I think they've really nailed it here. I'm hoping possibly to get a beta and actually review it for myself, but pretty neat, and also very limited. It's minimal in cost. They only had 49 backers, but I guess that was enough to move them through. So if you're interested in this, more than likely, if we jump back to their website, and it does indicate this will be available in February. So let me turn on. So I don't know if you'll be able to pre-order it elsewhere. More than likely, they'll probably have that option too if you're still interested. Or if you want to donate, I can see this being utilized. And it was one of the things that I've been concerned about specifically, and that is the ability to print from your 3D printer with, other than going out to Thingiverse or Umagine and picking up something from other people. It would be kind of neat to be able to create things yourself. However, a lot of the tools, notably 123D and Tinkercad, work fine, but they have a lot of tools there and people can get bogged down on them. So I think in this case, creating something very easy to work with. In fact, in this case, this is a pretty little neat model here that can all be done very quickly and very intuitively. I think is a big plus. So that's Doodle 3D. As mentioned, their Kickstarter is over, but they more than likely have some other form of obtaining it. Go ahead and contact them to find out more. It's reasonably priced. I think it's about $26. And if you're looking for something to be used with your 3D printers in a school system, this might be the direction to go. Okay, so let's move on to our next item. So let's see where we're at. I guess we are, I think I skipped it, so let me find it. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about it. So let's do our scanning first, Scanner Darkly. And this particular section, we're going to talk about how they're using the Artec scanner. And, you know, I have some experience with the Artec scanner. I had an opportunity to see it in action. If you remember, essentially, you have the Artec scanner, and then you require a fairly high-powered laptop. And I thought it was amusing every time I saw somebody trying to use it in a portable fashion versus, obviously, my application in the structure sensing, which can all be done on an iPhone. This requires a fairly high-powered unit. Nevertheless, it is a go-to product in the professional world. And here they're using it to scan skulls. that were buried at the site of the Terracotta Army. If you're not familiar with it, this is a place in China where there are literally hundreds of sculpted, I guess, figures of a military. And there's a scene, let's see, right here. Here it is. I mean, it's like more than a football field of these buried. And so little by little, and there's a couple of documentaries on the whole process, the clays they use, but some of the things that they're coming out with this 3D scanning functionality is that the faces and the skulls aren't necessarily from China. It's as though that they were trying to show more than just the Chinese physical traits, but actually traits from around the world. And they thought that was very interesting. In fact, there's, I don't know if it was identified here, there's a possibility that they may have had sculptors and creative people from Greece actually help in the process of sculpting these. Somebody put down in the show notes, which I thought was kind of interesting, is that that the Terracotta Army, you know, there's a misnomer that this was created in order to provide an army to the king when he died. And clearly, this person wrote it and said that is not the case. In fact, he was against military use and actually banned it. And maybe this was some way in order to keep the people involved in a particular program. Obviously, it's unknown, but it obviously was massive at its time. If there were a reason for me to go to China, this would be one of the things that I would love to see. But as mentioned, they're scanning, but I think it's more on the actual skull artifacts and using those. So, in reconstructing the type of person that the skull belonged to, and I guess they were female skulls. So I think that's extremely interesting. Again, another usage of scanning. We've seen it elsewhere, and we're seeing it here as well. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to jump back to my screen, and then I'm going to go out and figure out why I don't have my link for it. Let's see, here we go. I thought this is very interesting. You know, we've covered on a number of occasions bioprinting, the ability to actually print tissues and other organs. I mean, that's obviously the sci-fi or science fiction thoughts that you'll be able to actually 3D print an organ. You know, we talked about it last year, and it's been something a lot of people, you know, have been talking about, and it was sensationalized in the media, but they are making slow progress. And if you know, as we talked to Rice University, and they think it's still pretty far out, but one of the things that they mention at Rice University is, okay, you can grow or print the outer husk of a organ, but if you don't have the vascular system and the waste systems integrated within that husk, then it dies because there's no way to get nutrients to it. So I thought this was interesting that now they're able to actually print the tubular renal architecture, and in this case for a kidney. So imagine that taking this kind of functionality not only to create kidneys, because if you're aware of it, and I was going to have a statistic here, but there are a number of people that are on dialysis, but to be able to actually construct from your own tissue another kidney with the same functionality, maybe not identical, but same functionality. The obvious big plus behind 3D printing your own organs from your own tissue is the lack of rejection. And so that, I mean, obviously is the big science fiction plus from all this. But if you go through the article, it talks about how they went through and created this. And yeah, I thought it was really, really cool. And then there's a little video here. So I'll make sure the video is in the show notes because the audio won't cross over. But essentially, if you can mimic this by 3D printing, as they're showing here, this pattern, and what is not known, what I know from the Rice University, they created a lattice system before that included sugars, and then they, as the sugars dissolved, that left a framework that they could use to provide nutrients, because it created a vascular system, capillaries, and so forth. So as in here, you have open channels, which same thing. Now, obviously, the kidney has millions of these, so this is just a, I guess, a proof of concept, but many proof of concepts then get obviously made into more sophisticated units. So very neat. Obviously, these will be in the show notes if you want to learn more about it. We are making a lot of progress in this area, and we may actually see a fully functional organ, in this case a kidney, sooner than I was expecting, and maybe others as well. All right, let's move on to our next item. So there's a couple of things I want to bring up. One, if you're not aware of it, we're going to be in our VR corner in a round room. And the thing that I noticed, let me go ahead and drop out of this. So, as mentioned the other day, you can now pre-order your Google Daydream viewer. Obviously, if you don't have a Daydream phone, which currently I think will only be the Google Pixel and the Pixel XL, I have heard rumors that the LG G20 will also be Daydream compatible, but I have not confirmed that. And obviously, there will be other phones available that will have Android 7 and Daydream compatibility that will probably be able to use this, so you don't necessarily have to have a Pixel. However, if you're interested in the Pixel, the viewer is available for order. Keep in mind, if you order the Pixel on Google's own website, they you get one for free, if I remember correctly. Sadly, Verizon does not provide one, and we're going to talk about Verizon in a moment. But here, I thought this was very interesting. Somebody caught a FCC note that went back to Google about a new type of what do you call it, RF system that had multiple frequency ranges. In fact, I guess they wanted them to narrow the range. That was going to be used internally, and could be something to be used with Google VR or Daydream. I think that would be very interesting. It could also be some type of new high-speed content from a PC, Chrome device, who knows. I thought that was very interesting. There's not a lot of information in there, and maybe if somebody out there in the audience knows more about this, they can fill me in. But I thought that was kind of neat. So what else was in the news? Obviously, we talked about the Sony PlayStation, and what did Chris have? Eagle Flight is a new flying game. So let's see what he's got there. Yeah, actually, I saw this at GDC when I was there in March, and from Ubisoft, and essentially you get to fly on the back of an eagle. Let's see, do they have any video here? And it had a lot of wow factor to it. And this will be available for both. Here we go. So pretty impressive. Like I said, I did see it, watch some people with it. So if you ever wanted to experience flying, this would be obviously something cool. If you remember there, I had actually covered it at Awe, that somebody created a flying type machine that you lay down and then you actually move back and forth like you're flying like Superman. So I could see that being used in conjunction with this, or just lay on the floor and pretend. I don't know. But cool. Let's see. It doesn't actually identify when it'll be available. And it may actually, yeah, it doesn't say. Don't know. This was Chris's item. It might already actually be available. All right, so that's about it. Obviously, Chris is not with us, so we won't be getting anything, and he didn't write anything in the Print Whisper. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my item. So if you notice, if you follow my tweets, one of the things that I have been concerned with is I've got a Note 7, and I've been told that I need to shut it down and get a refund for it. Well, that's what Samsung says. However, I bought mine through Verizon. And Verizon has told me that, here we go. Yeah, let me log back in again. Let me jump back to me so I can log in. But Verizon, in a previous tweet to them, said to me, just go online and we'll make the process easy. Well, the thing is, when you try to do this online, because, you know, it is Verizon, Verizon has a tendency to always try and profit from everything. And obviously they've gotten a lot of dark marks because of that. So this is no exception. So when I go out there, and I'll bring it back up now, I have multiple devices, as you see here, and this is the new device. It's Pamela's. She doesn't know that. But so it tells me I can upgrade now. So if I upgrade, it is literally like previous upgrades. So if you've been under a 2-year contract and your time is available to upgrade, you can then choose another phone. And like I said, I picked this particular phone, and then I can go through and continue, and then I can select a phone, but then it gets kind of murky. At this particular point, all I have is the option of either going with another 2-year contract on one of these phones, and let's just pick the 7 Plus here, which is not what I want to do. So I can either go with the 24 months and get it at $319 or $32 a month if I want to pay month to month, or I can buy it outright. Nowhere does it indicate that I got credit for my Note 7. So obviously I tweeted about this, and they said, oh, we'll take care of it. You can get a refund. Because clearly, if I buy it through the Google store, because I'm thinking about getting a Google Pixel in its place, why buy it through Verizon? It's the same price, yet I don't get a free Daydream, which I would with Google. And plus, why do I want to continue with Verizon when they do things like this? Plus, if you notice, I had multiple devices there that they told me had been, what's the word for it? Disabled, but I was still being charged month to month. And these were month to month of type devices. So they do a lot of things that I think just make it very difficult, especially if you've got a busy day, to keep track of. So let's go ahead and go to my screen over here. And we're going to give them a call. And you should be able to hear it. So let's go ahead. Problem is, I won't be able
Thanks
to
for
hear
calling Verizon. To ensure quality service, your call may be monitored or recorded. If you don't want this call recorded, just say, don't record.
Para español, marque 9.
What's the phone number starting with the area code or the account number associated with your Verizon service? Or say, I don't have it.
Hello?
Sorry, I didn't get that. In order to get you to the right place,
Hello?
I'm sorry we're having trouble. So let's continue. Thanks for calling Verizon. To ensure quality service, your call may be monitored or recorded. If you don't want this call recorded, just say...
Hello?
Para español, marque 9.
What's the phone number starting with the area code or the account number associated with your Verizon service? Or say, I don't have it.
I don't have it. Hello?
I'm unable to locate your records and need some information to best handle your call. What's the 5-digit zip code of your service address? Okay, sorry, what product are you calling for? Say Verizon Mobile Services, or press 1. New service for another Verizon product, or press 2. Or it's something... Okay, I'll take you to the automated system that can help you with that.
So here's the problem. You get automated services
Welcome to Verizon Wireless.
and you spend like an hour.
You may contact us by dialing *611 from your handset, visiting VerizonWireless.com, or by launching My Verizon from your handset.
So I found that all of these services are just ways to kind of keep you in their loop without actually providing your services. In fact, I found that using Twitter seemed to get the fastest response. So I will call them later today and let you know what my results were in trying to get a refund from the Note 7. But you know, even though you can get phone services from a number of people, for instance, like Verizon, if you're planning to get a Google device, I'd probably go ahead and buy it directly from Google and use their own services. I think it's Fios, if I remember correctly. I can't remember at this particular point, but if you have it in the area, it's well worth it. Their pricings are good, and I think it's unlimited bandwidth. In fact, when I went up to Idaho, I actually exceeded mine, and I think I was charged for like a gig, like $90. So it's ridiculous what they're charging now for extra bandwidth. But you know, that was just an example. Obviously, if Chris would have been here, we could have talked more about it, but he's not. So let's kind of move on to the final item, and that is a product that I have been working on, and you may have noticed it, and that has been, and let's see, we can actually go to it. So this is the silver edition of the NeoDVR Uplay, and this particular version is hooked up to a eBay purchased, which is the LG. I can't think of it. The 5, remember the G5. So the other phone I was talking about was the LG V20. So this is the G5. This has the little unit that can be changed out. It's got a smaller screen, but I think it's a 5.2-inch screen, but it is a 2560 by 1440. But it is also a Snapdragon V20, which is one of the reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the latest version of GVRgraveyard. And I just made it public a few days ago, but there is a version of video for this, but there you go. And so I was able to, I actually couldn't get the gamepad working with this, but you do require a Bluetooth gamepad. I'm still working on the Daydream controller. It appears the latest version of Unity's technical preview actually does not work correctly. I wasn't able to actually create a build of Android. I had to go back to the previous version. But more importantly, I have found that the controller portion is either non-existent, or you have to load in a plugin, and there's incompatibilities with the previous plugin with the technical preview that allows you to do Daydream. So until they work that out, I probably will not be offering Daydream controllers anytime soon. So there's a newer version. But one of the reasons I brought that up is that I am going to be making available in the show notes a free APK. So if you know how to sideload, you've got one of the newer phones, either Marshmallow or Android 7, you're welcome to play with it. And again, over the weekend, I will have available in the Google Store. So let's move to the next item. And that is, how did I create it? So as mentioned already, I use Unity 3D. I also work with Unreal, but in this case, I was able to obtain some assets from their store, and through the assets, some of my own creations and my own audio and so forth, I was able to create this scene here. If you're not familiar with Unity, I like its structure. On the left-hand side here, you have a series of, or a column for, what do you want to call it, the different packages. And then you have the assets from the package that then you can drag into the actual game level, which is the right-hand column there. Or, I'm sorry, the third from the left. And then in the middle here, you have your scene. Also, you can, when you hit play, which I'll do so right now, it will launch the game functionality. And then we switch audio again. Yeah. Well, I guess I have some audio there. So essentially, you get a live preview, and you can actually run the game. So it gives you a very, so it gives you a nice, realistic in-game preview of it as you select the game functionality. You can also extend the game out, so you always have a look of what you're seeing in the game on a separate monitor. So if you have multiple monitors, it is compatible with that capability. What else do you have? As I mentioned, they have an asset store. So, you know, if you don't have a lot of skills in creating something, or in my case, you don't have a lot of time, many people have created a lot of assets. They're available. They're very reasonably priced. In fact, sometimes I found that their pricing would be better than if it took my man hours in order to create it. Plus, you can customize all these assets. For instance, a lot of times I retextured it or added some new features to some of these things. For instance, in the case of this one, I collected a bunch of things, created a cube map, and redid the cube map so that it was darker and more menacing. And then put it together. They also have a lot of tools that allow you to do things like consolidate mesh information. This is a large map with a lot of vertices and individual objects, which can play against using them in VR. So what I did is use a tool that consolidates the mesh into one larger mesh, and also created a larger, what do you want to call it, texture map. And by doing so, that minimizes the memory that's required by either the phone or your PC. So it actually improves the performance. The other thing is that you can create different levels and detail with this program, so that if you have a phone that just doesn't quite have the oomph, you can minimize some of the features. For instance, either hard or soft shadows, dynamic lighting, the number of pixel lighting. For instance, I don't know if you noticed that I've now included I've made it a little darker, but in doing so, I wanted to have a head-mounted flashlight. So now you have a head-mounted flashlight to help you navigate in the world itself. So Unity, I think, has come along, and as we've shown previously, the amount of environment texture capability that this has now and some of the newer features really play well to it. One thing I did notice, though, is that at least internally, it does not work on multiple streams. So you're essentially working off a single stream, which could have some issues as far as, for instance, from a VR's perspective of, for instance, if you have multiple tasks going on, it could burden it, so keep that in mind in design. So a lot of these things I took into consideration. So it's basically, it's like a sandbox, and then you just throw things in. There is some programming involved, and I didn't have it launched. They have a built-in tool, or you can use Visual Studio from Microsoft. They work with C#. I think in the past they used a variant of JavaScript. I personally like C#, and there are a lot of examples out there, so you can pull the examples, manipulate the examples, but I do think it's you should take a programming course. In particular, if you know of a C# course, I would get into it or buy a tutorial or a book on it. That really would help. Obviously, there's a lot of things online that you can use as resources. The fact is, not only does Unity have a lot of good information on its own website, but there are some other sites that also put a lot of good information out there as well. So, if you're interested in Unity, it is free, just like Unreal and the CryEngine. But I think getting something exported for multiple platforms, I think Unity excels. It also does a very, in my opinion at least, expedient job of taking the content and exporting it to different packages. I'd say it's about 1/10 the time from going from Unreal to Android versus Unity to Android. Now, some people can argue that the quality looks better in Unreal, but I also found that the actual APKs or packages in Unity are really a lot smaller. Some of my packages are always 300, 500 megs for Unreal versus anywhere from 25 to 100. I think this one here is about 130, but it is a very large map. There are a lot of audio files built into it. And so I did think that there's some better tools in some areas. And I also thought the import exporting is these more flexibility as far as what you're importing into it. And there is a massive number of tools available at, in my opinion, a very reasonable cost. So that's about it for this episode. We kind of went through the calendar already, but we can go back to it. And what do we got going on? Let's see, we've got October. So we have one more item in Netherlands, so 3D printing in healthcare. And then in November, we have a 3D print expo in Russia. So that's about it for the next couple of weeks. So that's about it for the show. So again, I apologize. Do not know what happened to Chris. He probably got pulled off for a client. He was obviously working on the show notes, and then he kind of disappeared on me. Oh well. So on that note, I'd like to call it a day. We also get done faster when it's just me. So bye, and I will see you next week on All Things 3D. This was 3D in Review for the week of 15th through 21st of October. By the way, happy Halloween. Whoa.